The show opens up in Damascus, Syria, where the infamous terrorist organization, the Islamic State, aka ISIS, is slowly advancing. They are attempting to bombard the city and make it their own. Although the entire world knows of this, no one dares to intervene, and the innocent people of Damascus are left to live in fear. One day, in the midst of all the chaos, an unidentified man clad in yellow is preaching to a crowd, urging them to stay calm. He tells them that they need not worry about the Islamic State, as the fate of Damascus has been divinely ordained. As the Islamic State begins firing upon the city from their vantage point on the outskirts of Damascus, the people brace themselves for the worst. However, before the enemy can breach the city's walls, a massive sandstorm of biblical proportions descends upon Damascus, enveloping it in a thick blanket of dust. The sandstorm rages for an entire month, effectively isolating the city from the outside world. The roads and airports are rendered impassable, businesses are forced to shut down, and the people are left to struggle in the face of this natural disaster. Yet, in a surprising turn of events, the sandstorm also proves to be Damascus's salvation. The Islamic State's supply lines are disrupted, and they are forced to retreat from the city, defeated and humiliated. The scene then cuts to a fertility clinic where C.I.A. case officer Eva Geller is recovering from yet another miscarriage. She is evidently devastated, but she collects herself and returns to work. There, she learns about the preacher who has now gained popularity after correctly predicting that Damascus will not fall to ISIS. He is hailed as a messiah, and people have named him Al-Masih. It is also revealed that he has amassed more than 2,000 followers, consisting mostly of displaced Palestinians. Currently, he is leading them to a desert. Among the followers is an orphan boy named Jibril, who is fascinated by Al-Masih's knowledge and wisdom. Although the real identity and motive of the preacher is unknown, his growing influence worries Geller, and she keeps a close eye on him. Later that day, Al-Masih and his followers set up camp to spend the night. Jibril finally gets to interact with him and manages to become his favorite. Soon, the C.I.A. gets to know that Al-Masih is leading the refugees to the Israeli border. They scramble to alert Israeli authorities, while the preacher's followers vow to fight the Jewish state. However, Al-Masih stuns his followers when he orders everyone to collect their weapons and bury them. Although puzzled, they eventually oblige and follow him to the border. After a while, as expected, the Israeli army stops the group and arrests Al-Masih for trying to infiltrate the Jewish state. Geller requests the American Undersecretary of the Middle East to let her interrogate Al-Masih, but he declines, saying it's none of America's business. The scene then cuts to the home of Aviram Dahan, who works for the Shin Bet, Israeli International Security Agency. He is always occupied with work, which caused the breakdown of his marriage with his ex-wife. Later, Aviram begins interrogating Al-Masih, and to his surprise, the mysterious man responds in fluent Hebrew. Despite his expertise, Aviram is unable to get a clear answer from Al-Masih, who claims to be on a divine mission to deliver a message from his father. As the interrogation continues, the preacher astounds Aviram by calling him by his real name. Al-Masih also correctly predicts that Aviram is hurting internally because of an incident that happened with a young boy in Megiddo during a Shin Bet operation. Hearing all this, the agent abruptly ends the interrogation and deletes the recording from Shin Bet records. In the next scene, Aviram meets his close friend and inquires if he had ever mentioned the Megiddo incident to anyone. The latter assures that he would never do such a thing. With this consolation, Aviram decides to continue his interrogation at 3 a.m. in the morning. However, to his astonishment, he learns that Al-Masih has escaped from detention. Following this, we are taken to Dilley, Texas, where a young girl named Rebecca is seen smoking a cigarette by herself in a field. Her father, Felix Iguero, is the town's pastor. The Iguero family is currently going through financial hardships, and they are struggling to pay off their debts. This has caused friction in Mr. and Mrs. Iguero's marriage, as the former refuses to seek help from his father-in-law. As the news of Al-Masih's escape spreads, tensions rise among the people he had led to Israel's border, who now face starvation and uncertainty. The international community watches with concern, fearing the potential for a larger crisis to unfold. Meanwhile, Geller finally receives clearance from her superiors and travels to Israel. She is determined to uncover the truth behind Al-Masih's extraordinary abilities and his mysterious message. Upon arrival, Geller is allowed to attend a debriefing of Aviram. The officials are shocked as Al-Masih managed to escape just 2 minutes after Aviram entered the detention facility. They are even more disturbed to learn that the security cameras in the cell block were mysteriously switched off for a crucial 12-minute period, during which wish the prisoner made his escape. Despite their suspicions, Aviram maintains his innocence and insists that the deleted tape contained nothing of significance. Meanwhile, the news of Al-Masih's escape reaches his followers at the border, and they become further resolved to stay. A paranoid Aviram feels like he's being set up, so he picks up his daughter from her play school, fearing for her safety. However, as he drives around with her, he notices a man resembling Al-Masih in the crowd. Determined to get to the bottom of this, he leaves his daughter in the car and follows the man, only to realize that he was mistaken. In the next scene, the real Al-Masih shows up at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and starts preaching a sermon to the crowd. He says that these steps to the holy place have been stained with the blood of brothers, killing each other for far too long. But now, that time has ended. History has ended. Al-Masih claims that Judgment Day is here, when the Almighty will judge everyone's souls. Soon, the Israeli police catch wind of the sermon, and they move to capture Al-Masih. However, they are forced to stay put when someone seemingly fires a gun from the crowd, and a boy ends up getting hurt. Panic ensues, and the boy's mother accuses the Israelis of shooting him. But right then, Al-Masih lays hands on the boy and miraculously brings him to life. The latter even rises up and displays a bloody bullet to the crowd. As expected, everyone hails this as a miracle, but before they can interrogate Al-Masih, he disappears into thin air. A few hours later, the news of the Al-Masih and his mysterious escape finally gets out in the media, and fresh riots start in Jerusalem over the shooting. To contain the violence, the Israeli police seal the Temple Mount and hold the people back. Back in Damascus, after Al-Masih doesn't come into contact with his followers at the border, some of them begin to get restless. They wonder if he has abandoned them for good, but the group elder urges them to remain faithful and not act out of foolish despair. In the meantime, Aviram is approached by Geller, who asks him about the deleted interrogation tape, but he refuses to tell her anything. Afterwards, Geller hires local Israeli agents, including her old friend Kamar, to help her investigate. They examine the footage from the shooting, but fail to locate anyone firing the gun. Hence, Geller begins to suspect that the entire episode may have been a charade, and the boy who was shot might be in on it. To get to the bottom of the truth, she drives to East Jerusalem with Kamar to find the Arab boy. However, they learn that the boy has already left with his family, fearing for his safety. Meanwhile, pressure starts to mount on the Israeli authorities as they refuse to allow the refugees into its country. At the border, an Arab woman from Israel covertly gives food to Jibril, assuring him that they will be fine. Surprisingly, Aviram is watching it all transpire, and after the woman leaves, he kidnaps the boy. Following this, we are again taken to Texas, where the teenager Rebecca packs her bags and runs away from home. After a few hours, her father Felix wakes up in the middle of the night and strangely goes to a gas station. He then collects some gas in a canister and heads towards the church, intending to burn it to the ground. Back in his room, Felix's phone starts bursting with notifications of a tornado warning, waking up his wife Anna. When she reads the warning, she frantically rushes to find both Rebecca and Felix, but to no avail. Suddenly, the town's air raid sirens begin to wail, and Anna finally finds Felix inside the church. The two start to worry as their daughter is nowhere to be found. With each passing moment, the tornado grows stronger, tearing through buildings and uprooting trees, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. As the husband-wife duo go out looking for Rebecca, they suddenly spot a mysterious figure standing amidst the chaos. He is none other than Al-Masih. He must have heard about how good the barbecue is here. Later on, a video of Al-Masih rescuing Rebecca is uploaded on the internet, and in no time, the CIA gets wind of this. Geller immediately orders her fellow agents to take the video down so that it doesn't become viral. She is perplexed as to how Al-Masih made it to America. The scene then cuts to a federal agent from the Joint Terrorism Task Force named Will, who drives to Dilley, Texas. He is taken aback to see the damage the tornado has left behind. It is then revealed that the only building left untouched was the church, and inside are Al-Masih and Felix. He explains to Felix that he has come by God's will and compliments his church. Felix is shaken as he realizes that he was trying to burn down the very building which saved a lot of lives. All of a sudden, Will enters the church and arrests Al-Masih. Felix is left infuriated, but he promises to get the preacher out soon. In the meantime, Aviram interrogates Jibril with the hopes of getting information on the Messiah's whereabouts. However, the boy honestly replies that he doesn't know anything about him. Aviram is confused as to why so many people choose to follow the preacher, despite not knowing who he is. Back in Dilley, Rebecca reveals to her mother that she was hiding under a rail overpass in the drains, when suddenly she saw the Messiah standing in front of her. Afterwards, Anna approaches Felix outside the church and informs him of everything. In response, he says that none of the things that have happened are a coincidence. Meanwhile, Geller arrives in Texas and gets permission from the CIA director to question Al-Masih. On the way to her hotel, she checks the internet to see if the video of the Messiah has surfaced. To her relief, it hasn't. However, upon arriving at the jail where Al-Masih is currently detained, she receives some bad news. The federal agent Will informs her that Al-Masih's American Civil Liberties Union lawyer has banned any outside contact with the authorities. This means that Geller won't be able to question him, much to her dismay. That night, the situation worsens when another video of the Messiah and his appearance during the Texas tornado goes viral. Meanwhile, Al-Masih finally meets his lawyer from ALCU and has a serious chat. The latter mentions that while the charge of his illegal entry into the US is likely to be upheld in court, she thinks she can get him out of jail time. Shortly after, Will arrives at the detention center and calls Geller. He arranges a meeting between the two, as Al-Masih's lawyer has already left. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, Geller rushes to the detention center and meets Al-Masih for the first time. The two then interact with each other with a very calm demeanor. Geller gives a long monologue where she mentions that she knows people like him, people who have become so committed to the idea of God that they begin to embody him. This is what makes people like Al-Masih so dangerous. The latter listens to this carefully and turns it around on Geller by mentioning that she worships her job and is an acolyte of the CIA. Out of nowhere, things take a twisted turn as the Messiah goes on to reveal deeply personal things about Geller. He talks about her loneliness, the death of her mother and her husband, and how she's currently in pain. Despite being shaken up, Geller tries to maintain her ground, but eventually leaves the room as it becomes overwhelming. It is then revealed that Will had been recording their entire conversation. As a result, Geller begins to think that the man could be part of a counterintelligence agency because of the deep and personal information he has on her. The same night, back in her hotel room, she reveals to her boss that Israel is seeking to extradite Al-Masih and that the state's attorney will argue that this be allowed. So, she explains about how the US must detain him on American soil to extract more information. The next day, Al-Masih's first hearing takes place, where he is denied bail. The judge mentions that the next hearing will take place the following week. As the days pass, Al-Masih's trial becomes a political issue, with people arguing about his true intentions on live television, even on channels like CNN. Back in Dilley, the destruction the tornado left in its wake is devastating, and Felix and his family offer to help those in need. It turns out that many people from all over the country have begun to camp in Dilley to see where the Miracle Man, aka Al-Masih, appeared. When Felix hears the news about the Messiah's first hearing, he decides to leave town to be with him. On the day of his second hearing, Felix is also present along with Geller. Al-Masih then makes a statement, explaining about how he walks with all men and has no religion. He also talks about the idea of borders and countries. This stirs up a lot of media attention and also jeopardizes his chances of winning the case. Because of this, some high-ranking officials decide to evict him out of the country. Elsewhere, it is revealed that Aviram had let go of Jibril and dropped him off in the middle of the desert to die. The poor boy walks for miles without any water and eventually collapses due to exhaustion. A few days later, he finally regains consciousness after his friends find him in the desert. Meanwhile, Aviram has a meeting with his boss, who demands that he confess about the contents of the interrogation tape with Al-Masih, which has been erased. When Aviram refuses, he is stripped of his job and asked to hire a lawyer. In the following hearing, the judge makes an unbiased decision and offers Al-Masih asylum in Texas. This means that he will be a free man now. The episode ends as Al-Masih leaves with Felix, ready to ignite more controversy. If you want to watch the next part of the series, click on part 2.